Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Underneath the Iceberg. I'm your host, Sean Denon. Join me as we dive deep into the untold stories of success. Through candid interviews, we're going to reveal pivotal moments and defining experiences that propelled these ordinary individuals to their level of greatness. Let's go. Hello, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you to the very first episode of Underneath the Iceberg podcast. We are interviewing today Cris Roudigrez, who is someone who I really admire. I've known Cris for years now at this point. Super inspirational. And before we get into anything, I do have to tell a short little story about why Cris is the first guest and the inspiration for this podcast. So, my idea about this podcast was there's so many stories that are fascinating, right? People's journeys. Everyone always looks at the tip of the iceberg and wow, they're successful. They drive a nice car. They have a great business, great family, all this kind of stuff. But what did they do to get there? And I always think about the Tony Robbins story of like Tony Robbins lived in his car for 6 months, right? Like everyone sees this massive successful man. But if you go back 20 years, Tony Robbins was literally living in his car. And it's just so inspirational to me. So I had this concept, I had this idea, but I could not bring it to the forefront. I just couldn't visualize it. I couldn't, bring it full circle. And one day I'm scrolling, and Cris is an amazing content creator. And one day I'm scrolling and consuming Chris's content like I always do. And there was this really cool post, and it was a share from like 2012 or something. I don't know, Cris, way back, right? And you talked about, hey, I just finished, I think it was like Saturday. You had just finished up like some weekend work. You just wrapped up a 70-hour work week. And you're like, and you had not achieved success at that point, right? Like that was kind of like hey, I'm just on the grind. I'm on the grind. And then today, like flash forward to 2023, Cris did a repost of that and just said overnight success, huh? Because a lot of people were in a similar mastermind group. A lot of people really admire Cris in the group, and they're like, wow, like you made it happen so fast and you did this. But so anyway, long story short, when I saw that post, it clicked. And I told Cris that night, I actually had a dream and visioned this title and everything. Like it just all came together. So Cris, thank you so much for that, right? This podcast is part in existence because of you. So Cris, let's start out with, tell me a little bit about the above the iceberg here. So where are you today? Tell me about your businesses and what you're doing.
Thanks so much, Sean. Honored to be here. Honored to be the very first guest as well. So thank you. My name's Cris Roudigrez. Full name is Cristina Roudigrez, but only my mother calls me that, and it's when she's upset with me. And I own Grow Pro Agency. We are a digital marketing agency that specializes in working with martial arts schools. We have over 400 clients all over the United States. We just found out we made the Inc. 5000 list, number 563.
Amazing.
And I have 30 rock star employees that, have helped us build this multi-million-dollar marketing agency. I also own a martial arts school. That's why we chose the martial arts niche. Been a martial artist my entire life, and I own Gracie Pack MMA. We're a BJJ and MMA academy that focuses predominantly on kids programs. We have about an 80% kind of kid focus and 20% adult focus. And I've owned that for 11 years. So that post that I shared, and that's, it's bittersweet with the Facebook memories sometimes. And when I screenshot that and shared it, it was at the, just kind of the beginning of my journey of owning a martial arts school. So that's where we're at now.
Very cool. And a black belt as well, right, Cris?
Yeah, I got a third degree black belt in Taekwondo and a first degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. BJJ is very, very different than traditional martial arts, programs. It's so funny when you have a conversation with somebody and they're like, "Oh, you do martial arts?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a BJJ black belt." And they're like, "Oh, my 7-year-old grandson is also a black belt." You're like, that's great. Great job. That legit happened to me in the gym this morning. I was pulling a sled, and I'm like, "Oh, she's such a sweet woman." But I'm like, some gym etiquette right after I was done pulling a sled, which is like the hardest type of like cardio you could be doing. I'm like bent over and I can't breathe. And she wants to talk to me about her grandson who, has his black belt in martial arts.
That's awesome. I love that too. Obviously my kids are very involved in martial arts, and I have some martial arts background myself, and it is funny, like when you hear that, right? Or it's like the other arts, right? So it's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm 30 years trained in this one, and you're like, okay, well, grab my arm, right?
Yeah.
Like from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu standpoint. So
Yeah. And I'm not knocking on the other styles. I mean, I started in Taekwondo, but
no,
it's a
100%.
completely different world when you hit the ground.
Yeah. All different, all different. Well, that's awesome. Well, Cris, so the format that we like to follow here is, it's we're going to tell the story. So start us out early, bring us back. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, growing up. What helped, what events, things helped potentially shape you to push you into that direction, and then we'll pick it up from there. But let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in New Jersey, and I actually ended up moving down to Florida when I was about 4 years old. My parents got a divorce, and my mom moved us down here because after the divorce, she started dating, and she ultimately met my stepdad, who lived in Tampa, Florida. So we ended up moving down here, and that's really home to me. And I have a very interesting experience growing up because, one of my favorite books is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I didn't have a rich dad, poor dad. I had a white collar family and a blue collar family. So my biological father worked for PSE&G his entire life, from the day he graduated high school all the way to retirement, which is an electric company. He worked on the plant, completely blue collar. And my mother and my stepfather always worked in the pharmaceutical world. So they, worked their way up the corporate ladder. And because of that, you had two families with very different mindsets about work. And one of the things that I will never forget as a child was sitting at the dinner table with my white collar family, my mom and my stepdad, and every single night they were complaining about their bosses. And I would just sit there and I'm just thinking, like, what? Why do you work there? If it's that bad, if the boss is that bad, why do you work there? And then I'm just thinking, like, well, okay, they make good money. So ever since I was very young, I never wanted a boss because of those conversations that happened at the dinner table.
Interesting.
And, from the blue collar aspect, and, I mean, for anybody that would ever think that blue collar workers don't work nearly as hard as white, I mean, that's just not true. Like, my dad worked 12 to 14-hour shifts, I mean, a lot of physical labor. And what I took away from that is, just because you work really, really hard doesn't necessarily mean it equates to wealth. And I think that is a misconception that people do have in terms of money.
Yep.
It's not just about working hard; it's also about working smart.
Yep.
So that kind of really laid the foundation of wanting an entrepreneurial life. And I'll never forget the day. It was March 15th, 1993. My mom picked me up from school. She picked me up in the car rider line, and I get in the car, and she goes, "What do you think about trying martial arts?" And I had wanted to try it for a while. My mom did judo in the Bronx when she was a kid. And at the YMCA, where she took aerobics classes, right next door, there were karate classes going on. And, I wouldn't watch the aerobics class, I'd watch the karate class. So she picked me up, and we went to Bill Heimberger's Junior Institute of Taekwondo. And I will never forget that day. Mr. Chin was my instructor. He did my introductory lesson. And it was a day that forever changed the path of my life. I knew, like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. I absolutely fell in love with martial arts. And I was fortunate that my parents did their research. They found a martial arts school that was a legit school, and they found a school that also had business savvy. And not a lot of martial arts schools do, because when you think about opening up a martial arts school, you typically don't do it because you want to become rich or wealthy. It's a passion that you have. You love it. You love teaching it. But the school we found wasn't just great in terms of teaching and passion. They were also really great business owners. So I got to see firsthand what a successful martial arts school looked like. And
And
once
I think that
I,
I think that's amazing because there is so many that struggle, right? And just, knowing other owners of other gyms where it's like that constant, hey, we're picking up a little momentum, we get some students, then people fall off, and you're in that constant, rat reel, which by the way, Chris's company can help you with that if you're a martial arts owner and you're listening to this. But
exactly.
no, that's so how old were you at that time, Chris?
Yeah, I was 8 years old when I
8 years old?
started at the martial arts school. And I mean, legit, that's all I had ever wanted to do. I mean, I still have blueprint drawings of what I would want my martial arts school to look like that I was
Really?
making when I was a kid. And,
Wow.
once I really fell in love with it, I was there from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. My parents would just drop me off. And, I was the kid like, Mr. Cook, can I clean the toilets? Can I clean the sink? Can I, vacuum? I was all in. And, for me, I'm an only child, and I think that has definitely shaped the person that I am today. And martial arts, it's not necessarily a team sport when you really think about it. I mean, you absolutely need other people to get better, right? Like you can't really just grapple with a grappling dummy. You can't really just hit the bag to really get good at martial arts. You do need team members to help you, build your skills. But at the end of the day, when you go out there and you step out on the competition mat, whether it's wrestling, whether it's an MMA fight and the cage is closing, whether it's a jiu-jitsu tournament, you high five and fist bump, it's just you.
Yep.
And being an only child, I got very comfortable just being alone, being by myself. And martial arts, allowed me to leverage really focusing on developing my own skills. And because they have the belt rank aspect of it, you get that extrinsic reward. And I believe that my experience in the martial arts is really where my ambition was born. And I do believe that ambition that I have has helped the iceberg up top, kind of grow. And
Absolutely,
I
because if you think about it, with the martial arts, with the training, the other thing that I always love about martial arts. Okay, so average length to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt from the first time you walk in, 10 to 12 years, right? Like
Yep.
it's like so. It's something that teaches us. We're so used to instant reward. I think, Chris, right? And
Mm,
again, going back to that post that I just loved, people think that it was an instant because you did have, rapid success in the growth of your agency, right? So like you were
yep.
able to come in, I think 7-figure agency helped with that, obviously, right? And just, so you were able to really dial things in and have that scale. But without the foundation of from 8 years old of the martial arts training, of the learning the patience, I saw this one quote by this one mentor of mine, and he posted it up, and he's like, so many people, I think it's like 70 to 80% of businesses fail that start, right? And he's like, so many people fail right before they're about to have success. Like you're
Yep.
right at the edge, you're right there, and you just give up, And I think the martial arts background, the martial arts, the understanding that like, yeah, you're going to train for 2 years and you might end up with like 2 little stripes on your belt. And that's the most reward you're getting from me right now. That's one
Exactly.
thing I love about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's not that, hey, I get a belt every week, and I think for the children, like I love the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the belt system for the kids, because the kids need more of those rewards as they're building, because we're building
Sure.
them, right? It's who they are, but foundationally, but yeah, no, but I just love that because it teaches that patience. It teaches that, we want it today. We're used to everything instant, right? You can pull out your phone and you can find out anything you need to know in an instant. It wasn't like that way 20 years ago. You went to this thing called a
No.
library and looked in this thing called an encyclopedia, right? And it was like, so no, I just love that aspect of it. All right, so we're at the martial arts. We decide. So tell me about when you took the leap into I am going to have my own school.
Yeah, and I want to say this because I think it's so important for anybody that is considering, having children, or for those of you that are parents. I believe there are two things every parent absolutely needs to put their kid in. Number one is swimming. I mean, we live in Florida. It's the number one cause of death in children under the age of 5. It's a life skill. Swimming is a life skill. and the other one is martial arts. And I think that we are doing our children a disservice not putting them in specific martial arts, because it's not just the self-defense, which every person should know how to defend themselves. There will be a time that something will occur. And even if it's not just to be able to physically defend yourself, having the confidence to be able to walk away so a fight doesn't happen, right? People think, oh, like, you guys are violent. You're going to get, no, you actually are okay with walking away from a fight when you have the confidence that you would be able to defend yourself. So,
and you prefer to walk away. Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
anyways, I just had to say that. Swimming and martial arts, put your kids in it, guys, right?
I couldn't agree more. My 3 sons have all been martial artists since the time that they could walk and crawl. And today, Chris, they're not actively training in martial arts, right? Like they're big time lacrosse players, as you know. They travel, they're on the national travel team, all that kind of stuff. And it's one of these things where it's like, but I see the discipline. I see the 6 days a week. I see my son leaves football practice and goes to Crunch Fitness, right? And it's just, and then he comes home and he eats his 50 grams of protein and he has his system, right? And it's like, that came from that base of martial arts. That came from 4 times a week going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class from the time he was 4 years old to the time he was 12 years old. And it really, you know what I mean? Like, you can really see that. So couldn't agree more.
Sure.
Get your kids in martial arts.
Yeah, the discipline, the focus, the confidence. I mean, Joe Rogan said it. So Joe Rogan's, big into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And when he got his black belt, he said that, martial arts is a vehicle for reaching your human potential. And I truly believe that. So, I was a martial artist my entire childhood, all the way through high school. I got a full ride to any state school here in Florida, and I chose to go to the University of South Florida, USF, because it was in Tampa, and I was the head instructor of the Taekwondo school. Nice. And I knew that, this is eventually something that I wanted to do. So I got my degree in education. I thought that would be a very easy sell to a parent to put their child in my school because, hey, I've got a degree in childhood education. And I stayed in Tampa, and it was a very difficult decision because my parents actually ended up moving to California right after I graduated. So It was kind of like my home was kind of no longer my home, because your home's your family, right? Yep. And they went off to California, and that's really where I started getting very serious into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because I wanted the confidence of knowing how to defend myself if something hit the ground. And in Taekwondo and the striking-based arts, it's all on the feet. And a lot of altercations start on the feet, but they hit the ground. Any type of, God forbid, rape situation is going to happen on the ground. And I got really serious into doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was a huge focus throughout college. I ended up working at the BJJ school. I ended up becoming co-owner of the kids program. And then when I got my BJJ black belt, which took about 10 years, just like you said, I opened up my school, Gracie Pack MMA. And that's, it's still here today in Tampa, Florida. And we really grew quickly. We became a $500,000 martial arts school in under 3 years. And in the agency world, $500,000 doesn't sound like a ton, but in the martial arts world, where, schools are kind of scraping by doing $5,000 to $10,000 a month, it was quite a feat, especially being female owned, especially having a focus on BJJ with kids. And I was able to grow the school so well because I started studying Facebook ads and Google ads. And the thought of being a PE teacher for the day in the hot Florida sun to try to prospect and get students to the school, the thought of putting rat cards out at the movie theater or little road signs, it's too hot in Florida. It is hot here. So I was like, man, what could I do in my air-conditioned office? And I fell in love with internet marketing. This thought that I could open up my computer and with a few keystrokes of the keyboard, literally have prospecting on tap. And that's how we were able to grow so quickly, on top of having a great service, right? I mean, I think that's incredibly important. You got to have a great service prior to turning that marketing on, because if you don't have a great service and you turn the marketing on, you could actually end up going bankrupt.
Yep.
So that's really where the kind of digital marketing game came into my life. I had a buddy who did an ebook, and he showed me his email one day, and he was using Stripe, and he just had like email after email after email of selling this ebook. And he's like, look at the times. And it was like 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And I'm like, he's making money while he sleeps. Like, if I want to make money in my martial arts school, I've got to drive to the martial arts school, show up, run the credit card, like
line up.
That just, right? That unlocked this whole other level for me, seeing that you could literally make money in your sleep. And that's where my internet marketing career kind of really took over.
So I love the tie-in here, because early on you talked about, which I love, the white collar family, blue collar family analogy, right? And it's like the hard work and grind aspect, right, that you put into owning a martial arts school. That's hard work and grind. But then there's the let's work smarter to make more money, right? So like, and I think that's so important, because like you said, you could have been at your martial arts school 14 hours a day, you could run tons of classes, but there's going to be a cap to that. There's always going to be a cap to that. And I'm a big believer in that too, where it's like you grind as hard as you have to grind, but you have to find the shortcuts, and you have to find the other methods, and you have to find the other ways. Question: did you have a partner when you launched your martial arts school, or did you 100% launch? Did you get funding? Did you what was your method to getting started?
Yeah. Being an only child, I believe partners are for dancing. Look, partnerships can be a really, really beautiful thing. And I've through Seven Figure, I've seen some partnerships work really well in the martial arts industry, but I see more of them fail. And I am a high D on the DISC assessment, and I honestly just don't really play well with others. There's no other only child. I'm a high D. And I think that's important, is to know how to play into your strengths. So I didn't have a partner. What I did have, though, was understanding that your network equals your net worth. So I was doing private lessons, and there happened to be this person that found me online that knew that I had specialized with working with children, and they were coming from Singapore over to Tampa for the summer. And he wanted his daughter to continue training in BJJ while they were visiting. So I ended up forming a very, very close relationship with them. And every summer and every winter, they would come to Tampa because they had family in here. And I would do private lessons with the daughter. And the father, his name was Paul. He goes, why are you still working for this other guy? Why don't you open up your own school? And I was still in college at the time, and I had really wanted to get my black belt prior to opening. It's not a prerequisite, but it was just kind of like a mental thing.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I don't have the money. And he's like, okay, well, how much do you need? And I was like, well, this is back in 2012. I think $10,000 I'd be able to open up, pretty confident. And he was like, okay, done. I'll loan you the money, 4% interest, pay me back in 4 years, which was a great deal. And I signed the promissory note. He was genius, because he said, you don't owe me the money. The money's coming out of my daughter's trust fund. You owe my daughter the money, which I just thought was very, very smart. And then the next day, $40,000 was deposited into my bank account. I only asked for 10. He gave me 40. And, I paid it back in under 4 years. But that lesson, really proved to me, not only is your network your net worth, but one of my favorite Zig Ziglar quotes is, you can have everything in this life that you want as long as you help others get what you want. And I did that for his daughter, right? I mean, I showed up every day. We're doing private lessons. He flew me all over the country because she wanted to compete. So he would fly me out to coach her, at Nagas and Grapplers Quests. Yep. And it's a relationship that forever, changed the course of my life. And I'm very, very grateful, for that. So I didn't have a partner. I got technically I got a business loan. Yep. And was able to pay it back very, very quickly. So.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you know what? It is, I think people limit themselves because they don't think about things like that, right? Like they just think of like, well, I'm just graduating college. I have no assets. I can't get a business loan. I can't do this. I can't do that. And we always, I think we self-limit a little bit, Chris, because, and it's a protection thing, right? It's our own protection thing that's built into our DNA. But, anytime something is going to be scary or anytime something is just, into waters that we haven't gone into right now, you're a debt-free college, you know what I mean? Like you haven't had that. Now all of a sudden you owe somebody $40,000 and people don't understand the magnitude of that sometimes, right? And I love that he made it connected to his daughter's trust too, because it's like now you have that personal connection that even strengthened it. But, I encourage people that are listening and thinking about, hey, I can't do it. There's no way I can do it. I would never get the loan. I would never get this. These are just all self-limiting beliefs. Like these are just things that you do a quick Google search and you're like, well, I'm going to need to have this many assets in order to get this loan. I guess I give up, right? And it's like, and you know what? Maybe they should give up. If you're willing to give up that quickly, maybe entrepreneurship is not for you.
It's not for you,
like,
yep. I think a really important lesson here, and I did a reel on this recently, is this mindset of going above and beyond what is asked for you. And I did that in my relationship with Paul and Kinnery. It wasn't like, oh, showed up 1 minute before the private lesson, do the private lesson exactly for 30 minutes, then I'm out, I truly took her under my wing. I, invested my time and my energy flying all over the country to coach her. And I think so many people have this mindset of just doing enough or just doing what they get paid for. And going above and beyond has never backfired in my life. And it's only continued to attract more people to me because of having that, that mindset.
And because I know you, Chris, and I can confidently say this, got back to the Zig Ziglar quote, there's a connection to that girl that was beyond the private lesson money, right? You needed the private lesson money. Money's a tool. Yep. It's going to help you pay your rent, your car, like that kind of stuff, right? So I never like to say, because I'm not a big money guy. I don't focus on money. I focus on, what does the money deliver? What's the outcome? What's the next thing? But, I think that passion that you have and that commitment, one of the quotes that I love is, when people talk about, when you do something for somebody else, when there's no potential of return, like that is the truth of giving, right? Like It's not like, hey, I'm doing this because I know I'm going to get this in return, right? So yes, you did your obligation that you were paid for by showing up and doing the 30 minutes. But the investment that you made into that young lady for the 15 minutes of game planning, for the travel, for the things you weren't paid for, right? To me, is what you put out to the universe. Now, you never knew that this man was going to come hit you with a $40,000 loan to start your dream. No. Never had that. You didn't do it with that purpose. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to get to, is do things with a pure heart. Do them to genuinely help somebody, and there's so much more power in that, right? Like I just think that it's huge, and that's a huge point, because knowing you, Chris, knowing how you give back to the seven-figure agency community. I mean, listen, Chris is somebody that's like, everybody knows Chris is amazing at Facebook. Chris just described that she owns a multi-million-dollar business in marketing, one of the busiest martial arts school in the state of Florida, all this stuff. And I swear to you, if somebody in the group reaches out to Chris and says, I need 20 minutes, I just need this explained or something, Chris will jump on at 9 p.m., whatever it takes, right? And it's like, and does anyone ever pay you for that, Chris? Does anybody, you know what I mean? No. Like, no, but, and that's just one of the things I just want to say, like, I admire so much about you, because it's such selfless giving, and everything that you're getting back now, like, I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction. I'm a huge believer in intentions. Think, Grow Rich is my favorite book. I've read it 7 times. So, and it's a difficult read, right? Like, but I've read it.
It's a little dry.
It's a little dry, but but it's just the principles, and it's like the thinking of it. And I'll tell you a quick story. So, my ex-wife is Brazilian, and this is early in my career, right? So I don't think I ever made a bonus like more than $1,000 or something, right? So we were in an apartment just starting out. We had our one son, and her uncle, is extremely poor, When I went to Brazil, he brought me into his home. I've never seen such pride in a man, though, right? Because he built this home with his bare hands. Part of the house didn't have a roof, Chris, right? And for me, I'm culture shock. I grew up right outside of Philadelphia suburb, right? Middle class family, that kind of stuff. So for me, it was a big culture shock. But one thing that I connected to was just to see the pride that this man had in his home and everything. Now, this man has 4 children. He adopted 3 children, okay? Does not have any money, Chris, right? But these kids had less than what he had. So anyway, long story short, the way he would make money for his family is he had a truck and he would drive around and he would pick up scrap metal and he would bring it to the yards, get it, and get money for it. That's how he made money to feed his family, right? Well, one day, my wife, I come home, my ex-wife is literally just crying, and I was like, what's the matter? And she's like, they set, his name's Chioginio, they set Chioginio's truck on fire. Like bunch of kids, like whoever, just hooligans just came in, set his truck on fire. He has no method. Like now he can't make money. Now he can't feed his family and everything like that. So I asked my wife, I said, how much do you think we could get a truck for? Like, how much do you think we could get a truck? I had $3,100 in my bank account. Okay. She goes, I found one for $1,500. Cool. Buy him the truck. Right. And it was just like, now I never thought like, oh, this man's going to pay me. And she's like, he's not going to be able to pay you back. I'm like, I don't want to be paid back. Right. Like his connection to what he does for other people and stuff like that is driving me to want to do this. She's like, that's half of our savings. I was like, I understand it's half of our savings. I don't care. I will make more money. Give it to him. Chris, true story. 3 days later, okay, closed the biggest deal I've ever closed for the company I was working for. And I received a $16,000 bonus check.
Wow.
3 days later.
So good.
3 days
so
later.
Good.
So for me, it's like people like it's funny because like people give me pushback on that stuff. They're like, oh, that's the mystical stuff, and it says, and it's like, yeah, it's mystical until it works. And for my entire life, it's worked, right? So I'm like, so no, it's awesome.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful. That's so good.
So we're gonna move into the part of the episode which is my favorite part, and you know, I love having you as the first one because everyone talks about whys, right? And that's a big thing. It's a big thing people talk about in business. And if you don't think about your why or your purpose or your mission or all that kind of stuff, you're missing out on a lot of your potential. I can tell you that because for me, it's what drives me and everything like that. But I always tell people there's surface level whys. Chris, you're a mom, adorable. Cruz, love that little guy. Awesome, right? And it's like, so a surface level why is Cruz, right? It's my son. It's you know, I want to do this for my son. But I believe the whys go so much deeper than that. And I believe that the whys come from what you learned in childhood, things you're trying to avoid, things you want to avoid for other people because of experiences happen to you. I shared, you know, before, and I share publicly, like one of my whys, one of my drives, like I really like to motivate people. I like to empower people. I like to, you know, make them feel like their best self. And, you know, I've done things like 75 hard and, you know, I challenge myself to try to be an inspiration for other people and things like that, you know, but part of that is like, well, I want to help people and I have a mission to this. And so, and it's like when I did my dig deep, you know, and I went to a retreat in an Amazon jungle one time to go really, really deep to really understand myself. And, you know, one of the things that I realized was it was the bullying. Like I grew up being bullied my whole entire life. And it was something that I struggled with, but it's like, but I also look at it and it's like, I look at that today and like, when I left the Amazon, I actually found out how to be grateful for that experience, right? Because who I am today, I wouldn't be who I am today without going through those experiences. So while they sucked in the moment, like I look now and I'm like, that's part of my why. Part of my why is I want people to experience the feeling that I feel every day. Chris, I love myself, like, right? It's not a bad thing. I'm proud of myself. I look at myself in the mirror. I high five myself in the mirror sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm proud of that, man. You know, and I feel I'm a great father. I feel this and everything, but that comes from that, right? It comes from that self that I built, if you will, because of those experiences and everything. So to me, and it was funny. I had one time I had someone reach out and actually like apologize to me, and they're like, dude, like I follow your content, like you're the man, you know. And it's like, I am so sorry for being such a shithead when we were young. And I'm like, bro, it's all good, man. Like your kids are beautiful, you know what I mean? So it's like, just to see all that stuff. So for me, that's where I discovered my why. That's where I discovered my purpose. But I want to get into yours because yours
Yeah.
is just like this it's like every time you level up, you're ready to level up again. And it's like, the sky's the limit. It's a cliche thing, but for you, it's like, I just see it. It's like all of a sudden I'm like, wow, she did this. And then I'm like, all right, time for cruise control. And then next thing you know, here comes elite CEO group that I'm helping women empower. I'm just like, Cris, what are you doing? So let's
Yeah.
get into it. Let's talk about the why.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to take us back to kind of where we left off with the martial arts school. And I had realized with the martial arts school that, you know, you got about a 5 mile radius to really make an impact. Like we're in a very saturated market. There are outliers of people that'll travel 60 minutes to come to the martial arts school, but most people in their day to day, they want to keep it convenient. And over 25 years of teaching martial arts, literally can say there have been tens of thousands of children's lives that I have positively impacted. I love this time of the year. Like last week was back to school week, and I'm friends on Facebook with all of the parents that have ever been, training at my school, and seeing kids that maybe had only trained for 2 to 3 years, 10 years ago, and
Yep.
seeing them on their first day. And I realized my ripple effect could only get so far with a brick and mortar business. I'm only going to be able to really impact the people within a 5 mile radius of me. And it was great. I think that being a martial artist my whole life, I didn't find martial arts later in life like a lot of BJJ school owners. I mean, it was a huge part of my life. I never took a break from martial arts. I was looking for something to excite me again. And it wasn't, I didn't look at it like shiny object syndrome because I had waited until I had established the business. The business was about 8 years old before I started looking in other ways. But I love teaching, any form of teaching. I got my degree in teaching. I've been teaching martial arts since, literally when you're a brown belt, you have to start assisting classes in order to get your black belt. So like by the time I was 10, I was assisting and teaching. And I also had met my wife during this time, and I wanted to be able to provide a better life than I had. And I had a really, really good life. Like I knew I didn't want to have children until I was in a place to provide them a better life than I had. And I'm not just talking like materialistically about the house that we, grew up in, but I was emotionally secure enough to be able to give back how well my parents gave back to me.
Yep.
And because I had fell in love with internet marketing and learned these new skill sets, and I'm like hashtag skill collector. Skills are something that nobody can ever take away from you. So when somebody, a business owner asks, what do I invest in? You need to invest in yourself first. That's where it starts. And with these new skills, I was able to start helping other martial arts schools use digital marketing to grow their school. And it was like this light bulb effect, like, whoa, if I can help them get more kids to their school, my ripple effect just widened.
Yep.
And I really fell in love with seeing school owners who were struggling to get kids into their school. And it's not just about the money, it's about the impact, right? Like, yeah, you don't open up the martial arts school because you want to become rich. You do it because you want to make an impact. And they were not able to make as big of an impact because they only had 30 kids in their school.
Yep.
And I really fell in love with seeing that ripple effect widen. So I started teaching school owners in an 8-week marketing mastermind. We spent 4 weeks on Facebook, 2 weeks on Google, 2 weeks on Instagram. And at the end, I only charged $500 for it. And I mean, there were homework assignments, 90-minute, like office hours, gave a lot of value. And at the end of the 8 weeks, they said, Cris, we learned so much, but I don't want to do this. I didn't open up my school to run Facebook ads. Will you just do it for me? And that's where Grow Pro was born. And I decided to say yes because I saw that ripple effect with these people that I was doing the 8-week courses with, and imagine how much bigger that could get. So that's where the agency was born, and we just celebrated our fourth year. The first year was kind of like the side hustle kind of thing,
Yep.
1099 contractors, remote workers helping me. And then when COVID hit and everybody went remote, I said, you know what? If we're going to get through this and we're going to be better at the end of it, everybody's coming in office. So when everybody went remote during COVID, I said, nope, I'm pivoting my business. I'm going to bring everybody in office because I know I am a great in-person boss. I built a brick and mortar being an in-person boss. I can build an internet marketing company being an in-person boss. And so we've really only had about 3 years of me kind of playing, like all in. And, now 400 clients and 30 people. And now that ripple effect isn't just about making more of an impact in their communities. What's most important to me now is making an impact on my employees. Last week, our onboarding manager, Mike, he just closed on his house. What an amazing feeling to know that I had a part in his ability to do that. And to take it a step further, we do an all hands on deck meeting every Friday. I had brought a real estate broker in to do a presentation to the team about all of the different types of loans that they could be leveraging now in Florida. How do I know her? I know her through jiu-jitsu. Her and her husband own a jiu-jitsu school. And he used her and what she taught us during that all hands on deck meeting to buy the house. And this happened within like 8 weeks. I mean, it was a crazy turnaround. So that is one of the big parts of my why now is I need to build, and Ed Milet said this, you got to build a dream big enough that everybody else's dreams can fit inside of that. And that's what I am on a mission to, is to build something so big that every person that is close to me, that every person that is under the umbrella of, Cris Roudigrez, that their dreams can become a reality as well. So that's one part of it, right? The next thing I want to share is I did this exercise. It's called 7 Levels Deep. And the first question, that they, ask you when you're doing this exercise is, what is important to you about becoming successful, right? That's a pretty simple question, but sometimes it's not something you really sit down and you put pen to paper on. So the first level, what is important to you about being successful? Well, my first answer, which is a superficial answer, was to gain financial freedom. Well, then you unpack that. You peel that layer, that onion layer back just a little bit more. Okay, why is it important to gain financial freedom? Okay, so I can do what I want, where I want, when I want, with whom I want, for as long as I want, which is limitless choices. I think we'd all agree life is better when you have choices. Okay, well, why is it important to have limitless choices? Well, so I could spend more time with my family. Okay, why is it important to spend more time with your family? So we can travel the world together. Why is that important? So we can share life's best experiences together. Why is that important? So I have no regrets on my deathbed. Well, why is that important? So while I will have lived my best life with limitless choices with the people that I love the most. And it's a very powerful exercise because, like you said, oftentimes when you ask somebody what is their why, you get that first initial superficial answer, right? Okay, well, let's peel that back a little bit more. And you peel it back 7 times. So my why, it's so that I will have lived my best life with limitless choices with the people that I love. And what that looks like, and again, another Ed Milet kind of saying here is, when we die, if we meet the person we could have become, you want to make sure that there aren't any stark differences. Yep. And when I die and I meet the person, the potential that Cris Roudigrez had, I got to make sure that that is the same woman that's staring back at me.
Yep. You get that big high five, right? It's like, there you are. You did it. That's amazing.
Good, right?
Cris, so just for all the listeners, because I think this is super important, I want everyone to walk away with something tangible. So that exercise that Cris just did, I've done that myself too. So Cris, just to confirm on that. So start with your top level why, right? And then whatever that is, question what that is. Okay, so why do you want financial freedom? Well, because I want this. Well, why do you want this? Go 7 questions deep with that. And that's where you start to really uncover the base, the truth level. So I encourage everybody to try that exercise. Like I've encouraged people before, if you really want to go deep, try that exercise in front of a mirror. Okay. I'm a big mirror guy, Chris. So I tell people like mirror work is like bag work for me, right? It's just, I go in front of the mirror, I practice something, I say something. If I come up with a new tagline, I look myself in the eye and I say the tagline. And if I look myself and say, you're full of shit, guess what? The tagline's full of shit, right? It's not or I have to keep refining it and practicing it and doing it. So I do that in my coaching. I think one of the most difficult things and challenging things is sometimes you see people that are just like, they have a business and sometimes a 7-figure business. And I ask them, like, well, what do you do? Well, we do like some marketing and we kind of, and it's like, you don't even have like a quick 20-second, like what you do, right? Like, come on, like we all know we need an elevator pitch, right? So anyway, I always challenge people to do that. And I'm like, listen, go in front of the mirror, look yourself in the mirror, eye to eye, like really get inside your own eyes and say that and say it 100 times. And when you believe it and you can say it with so much enthusiasm and power and everything like that, watch the difference when you're doing sales, when you're doing cold outreach, when you believe. One of the things I did on the Win the Week, Chris, is I run the Win the Week sessions, the Monday sessions in the 7-figure agency. I asked everybody, I said, how many people truly believe in their product and solution? There was a good amount of people that were like, yes. And then there was a couple people that were like, no, I don't really know. I just added this on and da, 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 da. So I started unpacking with them. I'm like, listen, then get rid of that. Like, you believe in the Facebook ad structure, then do that and go all in on that and do 100% on that. Because the minute that you're bringing your self-doubt and your limiting beliefs into a sales conversation, forget it, right? Like, you need to fully believe. So that's actually one of the things I have some people doing is like cutting some stuff out of their programs right now. And I use you as an example. I'm like, hey, Chris built what she did doing Facebook ads, y'all. So
right? No websites, nothing, just Facebook ads.
Just Facebook ads. So, well, Chris, this was an awesome time. I always like getting to know you even more. Thank you so much. So real quick, how old's Cruz?
Cruz is 3.5.
3.5. Awesome. So swim lessons. I've seen that, right? He's swimming like a little fish right now.
And music. We haven't done martial arts just yet. We do a one-on-one introductory lesson just to make sure that the kids are ready for the group class. And we do have a 3 and 4-year-old program. He has not passed the introductory lesson, but my kind of mindset with it, because I was a little bummed, I'm like, the day you turn 3, you're going to martial. He's going to be a martial artist for the rest of his life. So, I want to make sure he doesn't burn out. But yeah, he does swim lessons, he does soccer at school, and he also does music lessons, which you might as well just light $180 on fire every month, because he's just hitting every random drum and banging on the piano. But I am a musician. I played the piano growing up, and music is I think can really help with the creative side of the brain. So that's what he's doing right now.
Well, I have seen that Cruz smile. So as long as he's banging those drums with that Cruz smile, I'm sure it's money well spent. So
exactly.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much. I'll let you get back to it, and hope everybody enjoyed this. And Cris Roudigrez, thank you for being our first guest, and thank you for inspiring this podcast.
Honored. Thanks, guys. Peace.
All right, take care.